I've been an educator for a long time. Over 15 years ago, the first time I saw executive functioning deficits on an IEP, I thought it just meant the kid was messy or needed a planner. I was wrong. It wasn't until I started navigating this with my own son that I truly understood the why behind the behavior. He's been teaching me since he was 10. And now that he's in high school, he gave me permission to share some of his story. Because at the end of the day, these aren't just labels. Today, I'm talking about a real person's experiences, his challenges, and his successes. And maybe they're similar to yours. All right, let's get to it. So here's the thing that most teachers miss. We assume that if a student can do a task, they will do the task. But for a brain with executive functioning challenges, the doing is often blocked by how the information is stored. I want to share 3 specific examples that my son and I have talked about the way that his mind often interprets and stores information different than a neurotypical mind. And I hope it's helpful to you to get into the mind of a student. The first example came up a couple of weeks ago and was about how lists jumble together sometimes for him. My son told me about a video he recently watched that he said perfectly illustrated this jumbling, and it really resonated with me too. And here's the concept he said the video showed. Imagine you ask a student to do 3 things. Complete the assignment at your desk, bring the assignment to the inbox, and then pick up the extension activity. In our heads, most of us see a vertical list. 1, 2, 3. But my son explained that in his mind, those tasks don't line up like that all the time. They stack up on top of each other until they're just a jumbled mess of ink. He told me, "Dad, when they stack, I can't read any of them. It looks like this in my head sometimes, so I just freeze." So what's the teacher move? Don't assume they can hold the list in their head. We have to slow down. We have to write the list on the board, put it into an agenda, or give them one task at a time. It won't hurt the typical kids, but it's a lifeline for students with ADHD or executive functioning challenges. On to the second example of how his mind works sometimes. We were watching Monsters University the other day. You know, wholesome family movie night. And they have those sliding scoring charts, sort of like the ones you might see in a church with the hymn numbers. The kind of things slide right through those little slots. The chart slid one team's name out and another team's name in, first place, second place, third place. My son pointed at it and said, "That's sort of like my brain sometimes." However, it's also a little bit different because when a new instruction comes in, it doesn't add to the list. It slides in the top and pushes the old one out. He said that he can often hold on to one step in his mind at a time. If I give him step 2 or step 3, step 1 is gone, knocked right out of that placeholder. So what's the teacher move? This is why we get frustrated as teachers. We think the students aren't listening, when in fact, they are listening. They just don't have enough slots in their mental slider. So how can we help? We can use visual anchors so they don't have to rely on their internal slider, explicitly putting in writing or in pictures what the specific tasks are. And on to the third example my son shared with me. This one goes back to when he was about 12. One day he came home from school and wanted to share a visual with me. He said, "Dad, I think I have a good way to explain how my brain works. Much of the time my mind is like a computer that has files all over the place. There's files scattered all over the desktop window in no particular order. However, there are also days when I'm well rested and when I can focus, and those randomly scattered files all fit in together into folders, and the desktop is arranged in a pattern." I could immediately see that visual in my mind, and it stuck with me ever since he said it. He and I have even been able to use that visual in many conversations since then about organization, about preparation, thinking about, okay, what can we do to help you to get more files, more organization? So what's the teacher move here? We often look at students' desk or a backpack and call it a mess. I want to caution you. Treat that mess as a symptom of an organizational challenge, not a character flaw. When you say put your things away, that's too vague for a scattered desktop brain. We can be more explicit. Put the red folder in the left side of your bag. And then it's really important to give students a couple of minutes, 3 or 5 minutes of dedicated time at the end of class before we release them out of our class. Many teachers look up at the clock and realize they only have 2 minutes left, and then they rapid fire their directions. Okay, finish up that exit ticket, put your homework page into your folders, write down the homework in your agenda book, and don't forget to, and the students have already walked out the door. If you rush those last 20 seconds of class, you're setting them up to fail. And if you find yourself rushing those last seconds of class, that means you yourself didn't organize your time well enough. to plan for those next steps. If you have difficulty with time and planning management, what makes you think students will be better? Of course, their binders are a mess if we don't actively carve out time to organize thinking. So consider setting a timer for yourself to go off 3 or 5 minutes before the end of the class period. Then allot that time for students to actually organize their thinking and organize their materials. And one last anecdote before wrapping up this thinking, I do want to share a recent win with my son and his ability to self-advocate. Just the other day, I asked my son to take out the trash. He looked at me and said, "No, Dad, Mom already asked me to get the vacuum. If I try to do the trash too, I'm going to forget both. Ask me again when I'm done with the vacuum." I wasn't mad at that answer. I wasn't mad at that no. In fact, I was thrilled. He was advocating for his own bandwidth. He knew his slider was full. He knew that more than one task in his working memory was his capacity right then. He wasn't avoiding work. He was prioritizing completing the first task. That's a win in my book. He was able to advocate for his own needs. Helping students with ADHD or executive functioning challenges isn't about fixing them. It's about changing our lens to see the jumble and the slider for what they are. If you found these stories helpful, let me know. Or even better, if you have some stories from students, from children, or even from yourself that can help others understand these executive functioning challenges, share them in the comments. I'll see you on the next one.